and I feel like a broken record heading into another season, saying, look, the Eagles have lost all these players, but yet they still look so good again because they've not really added anyone. They're just because of the way they draft and the way they use, especially their day 2 picks.
It'll get sorted. He'll come back in and we'll forget it even ever happened. I don't think it's like one of those times where a player just seems rusty the first few weeks of the season because of a holdout. It'll be fine, and he's going to be a commander for the next few years.
Very Bengals, that. Very Bengals.
Yeah.
Parsons has handed him the trade request, and he's now got into a public spat with owner and general manager Jerry Jones. I mean, really, Ben, what an escalation for what really should be a no-brainer of a decision for the Cowboys, right?
Yeah, such a needless mess. It's just not this season. This looks a boring team, really. And yeah, tough times for Cowboys fans. Could be worse though, right? Could be the Giants. Spoiler, we'll get into it. I do not think they have drafted their franchise quarterback.
Hello everyone, Cecil Martin here.
Hey, this is Hunter Henry.
What's up, man? This is Max Crosby, part of Raider Nation.
Hey, this is Ross Tucker, former NFL offensive lineman.
Hey, it's Tyler Lockett of the Seattle Seahawks.
Hey, this is Jerry Judah, wide receiver for the Denver Broncos, and you're listening to the 14-Yard NFL Podcast.
We are now less than a month away from the start of the 2025 NFL season, and the preseason gets into full swing this week after last Thursday's Hall of Fame game. I'm Sam Moores, and this is the 14 Yards NFL podcast. Welcome in, everyone. Today we're going to be continuing the series that we started last week. We're going to be previewing each of the NFL's divisions. Today is the turn of the NFC East. Joining me to break down a division that has not had a repeat winner since 2004. Is a regular guest on the podcast. He's a member of the NFL UK media royal family, I'd say. It's great to have you on again. Ben Isaacs, welcome back, mate.
Thank you very much. And I've got a feeling that there may be a repeat winner in the NFC.
Yeah. It's one of those divisions this year where, it's like the AFC is last week, where you can just see every preview will be like, Philadelphia, can they do it again? Will they go back to back? There'll be a lot of this in this podcast as well, don't get me wrong. But let's try and make this a little bit more entertaining. It's as always, it's a pleasure to have you on. You looking forward to talking about this division? Because it is better than many of the other divisions in football, isn't it?
Yeah, no, I think it's a really intriguing one. Even the Giants, who had such a terrible season, there's so much on the line for everyone there. They've got like every coach there is on the hot seat. They're trying so many new things at quarterback. The Cowboys are, it feels like they're in disarray again. They've got a head coach that no one's excited about, and they've got a star player who's demanded a trade. The Washington Commanders were one of these stories, if not the story of last season, with their unexpected rise. Can they carry that on, or are they going to do a Houston Texans? And in the Philadelphia Eagles, you've got a team that just steamrolled the NFC. And I did not have them winning the Super Bowl. The week of the Super Bowl, I thought the Chiefs were going to win that, and it obviously was not even close. It was a pretty dull game because the Eagles were just much too good. So this is a division where there are so many compelling storylines that it is one of the more interesting divisions out there, even if the bulk of it might be, well, it's all about the Eagles and can they repeat?
Absolutely. Well, we'll go into a recap of last year now before we start by going through each team individually. Last year, the division was a little bit weird. As many predicted, the Eagles won the division and they went on to match the same feat as they did in 2022, achieving a franchise record 14 wins and reaching the Super Bowl. But this time, obviously, they were victorious with their number one defense, putting up an absolute clinic in the Super Bowl, as you mentioned, Ben. Of course, the Eagles play another NFC East team in the NFC Championship game, but not the one that the majority of people would have expected it to be. Many would have said Dallas this time last year, even though no one was really confident about Dallas. But it's just, you look at the other two teams on paper this time last year, no one would have predicted Washington and rookie quarterback Jaden Daniels to have shot the world with a 12-5 season, almost doubling their projected win total. Dallas, on the other hand, they massively underwhelmed. Mike Zimmer's defense ranked 31st in scoring, and then quarterback Dak Prescott missed the final 9 games of the season with a severe hamstring injury that required surgery. And then finally, the Giants, they really disappointed their fans in their 100th season, with their GMO fans seeing their team win just 3 games and seeing Saquon Barkley have a season for the ages in Philadelphia. And in fact, those home fans in their 100th season had to wait until their home closer in Week 17 just to see a home win. And that home win over the Colts ended up costing them the number 1 overall pick as well. So a horrible season last year for Giants fans. And then heading into this year, the Eagles look strong once more, whilst the Commanders have attempted to surround Jaden Daniels. And then, as you mentioned, Ben, Dallas has a new head coach, they have a new defensive coordinator, and Matt Eberflus as well. And they will also get their quarterback back. The Giants, they have a new quarterback in Russell Wilson, and they've given their regime one final year to save their jobs. Pretty much everything covered there, Ben, right? From last year?
Yeah. It's kind of hilarious when you hear it all kind of spread out like that. It's almost not fair that the Eagles and Commanders get to play 2 ridiculous teams in the Cowboys and the Giants with the sort of things that they were doing from week to week. And I'd actually forgotten about the fact that the Giants didn't win a home game until right at the end, and that it was maybe disastrous for them in that maybe they could have got their franchise quarterback. Because spoiler, we'll get into it, I do not think they have drafted their franchise quarterback.
There you are, and I have the same opinion as well. Right, we'll start with the Eagles as we did last week. We're doing the division, the order the teams finished in the division last year. I'll start with the Eagles, the reigning Super Bowl champions, of course, and obviously right off the bat, the biggest storyline for Philadelphia heading into the season is whether or not they can put up a Super Bowl defense. Become one of a few teams that have gone back to back Super Bowl champions. Obviously, the Chiefs have done it recently. The Patriots have done it recently as well. What do you make of the Eagles, Ben? Do you think they've got the minerals to go and do it again?
I think they have, in part because when I look at the rest of the NFC, I don't see that anyone has improved enough to particularly challenge what we saw from the Eagles last season. Now, they did lose some pieces. They also lost Kellen Moore, who was an absolutely fantastic offensive coordinator for them. There is a certain level of continuity, and Kevin Patullo is going to be the offensive coordinator, and I think things will be sort of similar. But with Saquon Barkley, I don't see him having a season as good as that this year, just simply because it's difficult for a running back of that age to do something like that once, let alone 2 seasons in a row. Now, if he regresses and is only 75% of what he was last season, that doesn't mean that the Eagles are going to have major problems. It just means that Saquon Barkley is not going to be this juggernaut who can just close out games when they need him to. But you look at the rest of the coaches, you look at, once again, they drafted well. You look at the depth that they've got, you look at the experience they've got, you look at the confidence that they will have going into the season. And I think it's difficult to bet against them being the NFC's representatives, because I look through the conference and I don't see someone who stacks up to them in terms of roster and coaching enough to make me think that the Eagles will have to go on the road to win an NFC championship game. I think the road to the Super Bowl is gonna go through Philadelphia. They're gonna wrap up home field advantage. And that's not to say they can't be beaten, but there's no reason to look at anyone else and think, oh yeah, they're better than the Eagles in the NFC.
Yeah, I think I agree with you there. I think they can absolutely at least get to the Super Bowl. Harry Roseman's done a really good job at foreshadowing the team's losses over the last 5, 6, 7 years, and the fact that they, especially in the trenches, that they can just plug in guys to play right away. And well, in our preseason power rankings we did a couple of weeks ago, they came in number 1. They were the unanimous number 1 team. And I feel like a broken record heading into another season, saying, look, the Eagles have lost all these players, but yet they still look so good again because they and they've not really added anyone. They've just, because of the way they draft and the way they use, especially their day 2 picks, they can build starters from day 2, and then you can plug in guys, because you look at the names they've lost: Milton Williams, Josh Sweat, Bryce Huff, who didn't really play much, but he's still an impactful player. Mekhi Becton, who started on the line last year, CJ Gardner-Johnson, Isaiah Rodgers, Avonte Maddox, Oren Burks, Darius Slay, and then Brandon Graham retiring as well. Not many of those guys were starters last year, but so many of those guys were important, like depth pieces who made plays throughout the season. They've got less of that depth this year. Obviously, they're relying on a lot more young guys. But no, it's remarkable what that front office is able to do, isn't it?
And the things that they do in the draft, bringing those younger pieces in on those rookie salaries, means that when they do need to pay someone in free agency, they can do it. So they just keep reloading. They're not rebuilding. They're reloading. Nobody in the last kind of 5 years has drafted as well as they have. No one has done as well in free agency as they have. They are the gold standard in terms of kind of how to build a roster, because we've seen the Chiefs obviously be more successful over the last few years than even the Eagles, but that Chiefs roster is built in a very different way to this Eagles roster, and it's been an absolute masterclass from Howie Roseman just the whole time. And it must be so frustrating for other teams in the NFC East to just look at the Eagles and think, why don't they get weaker? Why did they just manage to plug these holes? Why do these players seem to fall to them in the draft all the time? And it's not luck, it's planning ahead. And when you are already coming from a position of strength, you never have to reach for a player. So you can wait and you can see, okay, look, a couple of players here have fallen. They're number 18 on our board. We're going to pick them up at 32 or 31, and thank you very much.
Well, yeah, exactly that, really. They did that with Jihad Campbell in this draft. He's one of quite a few young players who are going to have to play right away. And it sounds like, from what we've been hearing in camp, he's going to have a really, really big role, as well as obviously Zach Bourne next to him. It's actually a bit of an end of an era. Obviously, I mentioned Brandon Graham's retiring. That's the first time they've not had him on the roster since 2009. He was being drafted. He was drafted in 2010. Has been with them ever since. And then to combat those losses, they've brought in guys that, a lot of them are sort of fringe starters across the league. But then those fringe starters for Philadelphia will become depth players, and that's just the way it works. Obviously, Kenyon Green from the Texans, Azeez Ojulari from the Giants, Josh Uche, Adoree Jackson from the Giants as well. Kendall Lamb comes over to be a really nice swing tackle for them, and they've got AJ Dillon in there as well, as Will Shipley. Those trio running backs will be fascinating to see what happens there. And then as well as Jihad Campbell, Andrew Makuba should have a big part in this team as well. What would you say is their biggest weakness from going back to back?
Do you know what? I don't think it's a player. I think it's just the hole left by Kellen Moore. The way that he got that offense humming last season. Kevin Patullo might be fantastic, but he has never called plays before in his career, so is somewhat of an unknown quantity. He is experienced, but he is not a play caller by trade, and that sort of thing makes me a little bit nervous, because what we've seen from the Eagles is that they always have players who can step up. If there's an injury, someone steps up. If it looks like that they don't have someone who's a legit starter in that position, do you know what? They plug someone in and it goes absolutely fine. But if your play caller doesn't quite work out, then you don't have that flexibility. Obviously, Sirianni in the past has stepped in and called plays, but that is clearly not something that he wants to do. So that's the closest thing I've got to kind of a weakness for this organization. But they seem very confident in Patullo, and who am I to say otherwise?
Well, Patullo probably felt quite hard done by the fact that he didn't get the job when Steichen left, because it was Brian Johnson instead. He had the role of pass game coordinator behind Steichen at that point anyway. He would have probably felt hard done by the fact that he didn't get the job in the first place. And he's been, as you mentioned, he's been around the league for a long time, but it is his first time calling play, so that's a real fascinating thing to watch for sure. I'd probably say that the defensive line is a little bit. I'm a little bit concerned by compared to previous years, but it's still up there in terms of just because of the player turnover and everything. There's quite a few new guys that are going to be rotating in and out. The likes of Jelix Hunt and Moro Ajomo will have bigger roles this year. But they've always been good at resorting both lines, and so I don't think that'll be an issue. But just the amount of player turnover on that defensive line, I'm a little bit concerned by it. Obviously, don't want to wish injured or anyone, but say Saquon Barkley or AJ Brown went down, I have absolutely no idea what this offense will look like, because it is quite a lot. It's built around especially those two guys, and then that opens everything up for Devontae Smith, and so if one of those guys went down, then that would be a big worry, and I mean, especially Saquon, he's not got the best injury history as well. So, maybe, as you were saying at the start of the podcast, maybe it is a good idea to have less of him this year, because you probably want him as you go into January, don't you?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he may well be fine. But it is tough. The wear and tear on your body, playing running back, the number of carries he came into the league with, having been kind of that bell cow back for a Penn State offense that ran the ball a lot. And then he was the most important part of that Giants offense. He did get injured. To follow up a season like that, and just the attrition and the wear and tear on your body, it makes me nervous. He was so exciting to watch that, obviously no one is wishing an injury on him, but it's something we have to think about, because history tells us that you're unable to keep that going for a sustained period without either an injury or just a massive drop off. And if they didn't have Saquon Barkley at all last season, let's say they just had a very average NFL running back, it's a completely different team.
Absolutely. Right, we'll finish off talking about the Eagles by predicting a win total for this year, as they have done with every other team. Now, Philadelphia has the fourth hardest schedule this year. Obviously having to play Washington and playing Dallas in division. They've also got a brutal first 5 games. Dallas on opening night, then Kansas City, the Rams, the Bucks, and the Broncos. They also play the NFC North as well, so it's a pretty brutal schedule for them. And because of that, the bookies have set their line at 11.5 wins. I feel like it looks like the majority of people have gone for the under. I'm assuming because of that schedule. If you were to go over under, where are you leaning, Ben?
I would actually go over. I consider this to be a 12-win team, which is not as good as last year. So and yeah, that schedule is tough when you look at who's on it. But those other teams who look at the fact they'll be like, oh God, we've got the Eagles. So how bad is it for the other teams? Because they've got the best team in the NFC up against them. Whereas at least for the Eagles, like, yeah, this is a tough team, but it's a team that we have been better than. So I actually do like the over there. I think there is value.
I'm just leaning the under, and I agree. I feel like they're an 11 or 12 win team, and I think 11 seems about right with who they have to play. But again, it is very close, and I think it all depends on that start. Say they're 4-1 after those first 5 games, then absolutely, I think they can get 12, 13 wins. If they're 3-2, then there's already 2 losses there, and you have got the NFC North to play. You have got tough games coming up on that schedule as well. So yeah, I think reaching 14 again, as you say, might be really tough for them, just because of who they play. But yeah, certainly for them, they're probably going to win the division, and they're probably going to be a top 2-3 seed in the NFC, which will put them in good stead as they go into January. Okay, let's go on to the Eagles' perhaps biggest contenders in the division, the Commanders, after their shock emergence last year. The offense was brilliant last year, and Dan Quinn did a great job with the defense as well. They're better this year, going all in this offseason, which makes sense while Jaden Daniels is in his rookie contract. In come the likes of Deebo Samuel and Laramie Tunsil via trades. Whilst they also added Javon Kinlaw, Michael Gallup, Dietrich Wise, Jonathan Jones, and Will Harris. After such a strong year last year, where Jane Daniels already looks like a superstar, just the way he was so composed under pressure, especially, really impressed me. Why not be aggressive this offseason, right?
Yeah, I mean, you've got to make the most of what you've got there. It's clear that they have their starting quarterback. Um, I try not to let Washington fans think too much about how after the first season of RG3, it was felt, okay, well, they've got their quarterback. They are set. All those years of misery are now over, and then it can be gone in a blink of an eye. Obviously, Jaden Daniels' rookie season was better than RG3's rookie season, but when you really kind of dig into the year that the Commanders had, there were so many very, very close wins, so many games where the defense was bad and they got a bit lucky to win. Now, were they lucky to make the playoffs? No. Were they lucky to win quite as many games as they did? Absolutely, they were. And I think, we'll get onto the win-loss record. I think we're almost bound to see some regression there. I think the team can be better, but not win as many games. Because, again, history has shown us that teams that go from being outsiders to being really good in the space of one season, and in that season they have a lot of one score wins, that generally that can't be replicated, that you don't do that year after year. A, you're not catching anyone by surprise, and B, those games where the ball bounce your way just right, they just tend to even out. So I do like this Commanders team, but I am not as bullish on them as a lot of others. I think we could see them do a Houston Texans. Obviously, the Texans did win their division last year, but expectations were so much higher than simply what we saw from them last season. We've not seen Daniels have to struggle with some sort of adversity. We don't know what's going to happen with Terry McLaurin. He's obviously put in a trade request. It's probably, just a bargaining ploy, and I think he will remain with the Commanders. But I'm intrigued by the Commanders this season, but I am not penciling them in for another NFC Championship game appearance.
Yeah, the Terry McLaurin situation is interesting. Obviously, because he's been so reliable, he's been in the organisation since they drafted him in 2019 as a third-round pick. He's put up 5 straight 1,000-yard receiving seasons, despite what he's had at quarterback in a lot of those years. Gazillion different quarterbacks he's had over the times. And then last year, with his best quarterback situation, he got a career high 16 touchdowns if you include the 3 from the postseason. But as you said, he's that contract that he's asking for he's not had it, and with him becoming a free agent this winter, there needs something happened soon. He's made it public that he wants to remain in Washington. Everyone wants him there, but because of his age, it's a bit of a complicated thing, because he's turning 30 this year. The organisation hasn't been as proactive as he would have liked. So, as you mentioned, he's trying to force through a contract with a trade request, and it's not the only one in the NFC East. We'll talk about that one later on as well. He's not been participating in camp, and I feel like with how reliable he's been, he's hardly missed a game in 6 seasons. I think he's missed like 4 games over that time. Entirety. Even though he's about to turn 30, if you give him the money he wants, which is around 32 million a year, the DK Metcalf contract is what he wants. What they got from Pittsburgh, but because by the time that contract's gonna run out, when he's like 32 or 33, that's around the time that you're gonna have to pay Daniels anyway. So yeah. I feel like it now. If you do it, you don't want it to drag on. You can have 2 or 3 years of high level football. Then once he gets to 33, which is when you probably would have moved him on anyway, then he is a free agent, and then he can test the market. I feel like it's just. Do you think it's more when, not if?
I would say so, and for the exact reasons that you've said, I don't think it makes a lot of sense for either parties to part company at this point. Financially, they're better off doing it now than further down the line. And for him, this is his last big payday. He clearly wants to stay there. He's part of the furniture there. He's a big reason why Jaden Daniels settled in so quickly. He is a great teammate for everybody. So I think it will get sorted out, and it'll all be long forgotten. He's such a pro that it'll get sorted. He'll come back in and we'll forget it even ever happened. I don't think it's like one of those times where a player just seems rusty the first few weeks of the season because of a holdout. It'll be fine, and he's going to be a commander for the next few years.
Very Bengals, very Bengals.
Yeah.
I agree with you, and I feel like it wouldn't make sense. Personally, if of the two receivers there, I think Deebo Samuel was a very exciting player. But if I was to, and they're the same age as well, by the way, they're both turning 30 in the next 6 months or so. So if I was to commit to one of those two receivers, Terry McLaurin or Deebo Samuel, for me it would be Terry McLaurin. I don't know about you, but that's just because Absolutely. I feel like he's a more reliable player. His game's more translatable to a lot more offenses as well. I personally think that's exactly. I don't understand why they pick one of them, because McLaurin would be the one I'd pick if I had to pick one of them. Onto their roster as a whole, there are a few big strengths to choose from here. Obviously, there's Daniels, the linebackers are quality as well, and then there's also the run game, which was so good last year. They're so good running the football last year. Cliff Kingsbury did a great job there, and again with Deebo Samuel, we'll see more of that, I expect, this year. What would you say is Washington's biggest strength?
It's the fact that I think there's so much growth potential in Jaden Daniels, that he isn't just their most important player. Everything we've seen and all the advanced stats suggest that we're only scratching the surface. Now, there could always be bumps along the way, and there probably will be bumps along the way. But I don't think we have seen anything near his ceiling. I don't think this is one of those times where someone shows us everything they've got at the beginning and they stay at that level. I think we've barely seen what Jaden Daniels can do. And as he is going to be a star on that team for a long time, injury permitting, we don't want another RG3 situation, but it's the massive upside. I've seen rookie quarterbacks come in and have really good first seasons, and having seen them in college, I think, okay, we've probably seen as much as we're going to see from them. We'll see how long they can carry it on. Jaden Daniels, I think, is going to get better and better. He may not look that much better this season, potentially, but there's just so much growth there that every Commanders fan should feel so excited on what they're going to see from him, even before his rookie contract runs out.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And I think the numbers last year were tremendous and everything. But I think the most important thing about the way he played last year, again, was in the fourth quarter and big moments. It's just how he looked like a 10-year vet in those situations in his rookie season. And I feel like that's what Washington fans should be really excited about, because in the fourth quarter when trailing, you've got a guy who can drive down the field himself, and that's what all 32 teams, fans of 32 teams, that's all they want at quarterback, is just someone who can keep them in games when they look down and out. If I feel like there probably are one or two things away from properly contending, so I certainly feel the same way as you do, Ben. I think for me, especially, I think they need a pass rusher. There's still a pass rusher or two because that was their weakness already last year, and Dante Fowler did quite well, but he's gone back to Dallas now. They also moved on from Jonathan Allen on the interior as well. Now, obviously, they have added Von Miller, but which version of Von Miller are you going to get? How much is he going to play? I trust Dan Quinn, but for me, they just are a little bit short right now on defense. I don't know if you agree there.
Yeah, it's a glaring weakness in comparison with the way that they've been able to make things work on offense, despite not being absolutely star-studded on offense. The defense feels like the roster isn't absolutely fantastic, and it felt like it wasn't coached super well either, which, at least from a Commanders fan point of view, you're able to look at that season and think it wasn't like everything went right all through the team. Loads went wrong on defense, and yet still they managed to rack up those wins. Now, some of those wins ended up being a bit fluky and taking a bit of Jaden Daniels' magic, which is difficult to sustain. Whereas if you get a defense that is routinely putting your offense in good field position and limiting the opposition to like 20 points a game or whatever, then those wins just come that much easier and you're not sneaking through. I haven't got much faith in Von Miller at this point in his career. I don't think he's the key to kind of unlocking this defense. Dan Quinn does know what he's doing, but they are going to have to shore up that defense if they're going to expect to contend within that division against the Eagles each season. They need a better defense than that. So there are so many good things about this Commanders team, but it's part of the reason that I'm expecting some sort of regression in terms of the record, that it isn't a bunch of like superstars or a load of young up and coming players. There are holes all over that defense that couldn't be fixed in one off season. And I feel that what they did wasn't absolutely fantastic. And they know it. It's not that they think, oh, well, look at last season. We got to the NFC Championship game. With one more season under Jaden Daniels' belt, we could go one better. They know it's not as simple as that. And they have tried to address the defense, but still a lot more work to do there.
Yeah, you mentioned the Texans, and you can compare them. If this team had the Texans defense, then I'd be like, oh wow, imagine, and that's that this team really could challenge Philadelphia, but it's just not the case. I'm afraid. That brings us on to picking their win total. Now the bookies do tend to agree with us. They have their line set at 9.5 wins, so 9, 10. So that is kind of where we've sort of been alluding to them. They have the 8th hardest schedule, so it is easier than Philadelphia's. Obviously, they've got a second place schedule compared to Philadelphia's first place schedule. They do play most of the same teams. I'm going to go for the over just because I feel like, purely because of this, right? They don't face the Eagles until week 16, and then they play them again in week 18. So I feel like they may be playing Philadelphia when everything's wrapped up, and I think that's quite an interesting nugget there. So I'm going to go for the over, but again, I do think it is quite close.
I mean, they can hit the over and still lose 7 games, which is a chunk more than they did last year. I like the over as well. To me, this is a 10-win team right now, comfortably in the playoffs, but not enough to challenge for the division when you've got the best team in the conference, in my eyes, kind of ahead of them. But yeah, I think the over, just like the Eagles. Maybe I'm being too optimistic about everyone, but this is, with both of these teams, I'm saying they're going to lose more games than they did last season, but still do well. Yeah,
and again, because it's the division that faces the toughest. Like, I mean, these next 2 teams as well. It's the games in division. I feel like are going to really elevate those wins because of what. In conference, for example, it may be that the wins are more spread out. Okay, one of the most interesting teams heading into 2025 is Dallas, who, as we mentioned at the start of the podcast, have a new head coach in Brian Schottenheimer after former head coach Mike McCarthy's contract expired. Now, they should be better this year than the 7-10 season from last year. Obviously, Dak Prescott is back, of course, and then the defense cannot be as bad as it was last year because it was the second worst defense in the entire league last year. So, yeah, you imagine that things are going to get a little bit better for Schottenheimer in his first season. But in typical Dallas fashion, they've been involved in a ton of drama this training camp. A couple of things have gone on. They've had injuries, but by far the biggest story is the most recent one involving the contract of Micah Parsons. Now, in the storylines to watch, I did a podcast. It was like biggest storylines to watch in training camp about 3-4 weeks ago, and I said, I thought it'd still be done pretty quickly. I said, I seem to remember saying that the TJ Watt deal would be more complicated than this Parsons one, a few more, and I was completely wrong. Like, most of the deals that I was talking about have been done so far, and then Micah Parsons is still here. It's still not been done. And the vast majority of the superstars from his draft class in 2021 have signed extensions. A lot of them in the last couple of weeks. We're talking about the likes of Trevor Lawrence, Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddle, Penei Sewell, Patrick Surtain, Devontae Smith. They've all signed extensions, and yet the best player of that class, he's still playing. He's playing on his 5th-year option this year. And his value is increasing by the day. They could have locked him up last summer, Micah Parsons, but their priority for them was getting Dak Prescott signed on the eve of the season, and then CeeDee Lamb extended, and now it's Micah Parsons' turn. But because of that, they're now in a scenario where he will likely become the highest paid defensive player and highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history. Probably about $42 million a year. Frustrated at the progress of the negotiations, Parsons has handed in the trade request, and he's now got into a public spat with owner and general manager Jerry Jones. I mean, really, Ben, what an escalation for what really should be a no-brainer of a decision for the Cowboys, right?
Yeah, such a needless mess. And Jerry Jones is clearly not happy about the whole thing. He was talking to journalists the other day, and he's thrown out this figure of we offered 200 million guaranteed and all this sort of stuff. And we don't know for sure because there can be kind of particular differences. I've got every confidence the Cowboys will re-sign Michael Richards, but it's just that I don't know why Micah Parsons even.
Yeah, I was going to put you out on that.
Oh no, it's fine. It's you should know I would get there, but it should never have got to this point. He desperately wants to stay. He grew up a Cowboys fan. He loves the Cowboys. He wants to be there. I don't think he's trying to find his way out. He is just looking around at the market and knowing where his value is within that market. He likely is going to reset it all. And he's earned that right. He has been such a consistent performer. He has been their best player over the last few years. And I'm sure it'll get done. But some of the trust might be eroded. It might mean that he's not where he should be in week one. But these things have a tendency of, when you've got a star player who really wants to stick around, once that deal is done, it's no hard feelings, or everything that's gone before gets forgotten, and he's back to full strength. They are not a team that are going to contend to win the Super Bowl this season. But if they don't have Micah Parsons, then this is a team that isn't even going to be in wildcard contention. And so many teams qualify for the wildcard round that the Cowboys should be aiming for that all season. But there might be a point where let's say there's a world where Parsons signs with someone else, or he sits out the whole season, then by the time we get to mid-November or the start of December, the Cowboys will have been eliminated from playoff contention, most likely. I hope it gets done. I think it will get done, but just completely self-inflicted wound again.
Yeah, it's just the drama never stops in Dallas, and I think with the trade requests, they almost sort of don't mean anything at the moment, because a lot of the time it's just the player's last resort of pay me now. We saw that with the Myles Garrett contract. He was in a very similar situation to Michael Parsons. He got his $40 million a year contract, and then obviously Parsons is trying to do the same thing. And again, this defense without Parsons, is before, even with Dan Quinn, it was very boom or bust. Trayvon Diggs can create as many turnovers as he wants, but then he gets burned deep quite a lot as well. It's very much been a fine margins defense this defense have. Last year it wasn't good. This year Matt Eberflus has come in to try and fix that. Obviously, as a Bears fan, you had a lot of Eberflus the last couple of years. What do you make of that hiring as a DC?
I am not the biggest fan of Matt Eberflus as a head coach. As a defensive coordinator, he's walked into a situation where it's the sort of players and the sort of system that he likes. I mean, I don't think that's a coincidence. I think that's why they wanted him in the first place.
Well, he was there before. He was in Dallas for 10 years before, yeah. Yeah.
I think he's a perfect fit. I think he is one of those players. I'm not going to put him up there with a Vic Fangio, who kind of just completely transforms your defense to the point where you're a contender just off that. But he's someone who didn't look like he should be a head coach and should be a defensive coordinator. Now, Vic Fangio obviously was a head coach and didn't do a very good job, but has always been, when he's been a DC, has been easily one of the best in the league. And he goes to a different place, and all of a sudden that that team is transformed. I don't expect that from Matt Eberflus, but for any Cowboys fans who are looking at the job that Matt Eberflus did at the Bears and thinking, oh, this guy is a loser, why are we having him back? He is a really good defensive coordinator. That's a really good hire. I like it a lot, unlike the head coach hire there, which just felt like Jerry Jones wanting someone who wasn't going to, take attention away from him. And I'm not a Jerry Jones basher. Nobody bashes Jerry Jones more than Cowboys fans do, and I get it. But I'm old enough to remember when he bought the team and how part of his drive and energy is the reason they won those Super Bowls. Now, you can argue he's also the reason that they have not been in contention since then. But he has hired big personalities at head coach, and it hasn't necessarily worked out, or at least it hasn't taken them to a Super Bowl. He brought in the likes of Bill Parcells, and Schottenheimer is pretty much as far away from Bill Parcells as you could, think up. Bill Parcells is someone who walked in having won Super Bowls. I'm doing things my way. No one's telling me what to do. To Schottenheimer, who I think will do exactly what Jerry Jones tells him what to do. And if things don't go right for the Cowboys in the next couple of seasons, it's just very easy to sacrifice him. And the poor guy will probably never be a head coach ever again.
Yeah, he's an interesting one because 10 years ago, he was being talked as like the next big thing. Schottenheimer was, and he didn't get a head coach at that time, job at that time, and then he's been around the league in a few different places, like Seattle, for example, and has called decent offenses, but it's never been it's never been to the level it was 10 years ago, where it was like, oh my god, the next Ben Johnson, as it is now, for example. He's not had that kind of hype for a while, and it'd be interesting to see what this offense does look like. They've had a couple injuries on the offensive line, which already look weak heading into the offseason after Zach Martin retires. But they've made some moves, and they should be okay this year, I think. They got lucky that Tyler Guyton's injury is not an ACL tear. He should be back pretty early in the season. They got really lucky there because that was initially reported as an ACL tear. So yeah, we'll see how that unit copes, and I think they'll be about average. I think adding George Pickens was a good bit of business as well. A lot of people in our network really like George Pickens as a receiver, and they're excited to see him in a normal offense rather than what the Steelers have had the last couple of years, which hasn't been a normal offense.
Yeah, I like it. It's like being put as a normal offense.
Yeah. But yeah, that's exactly what it is, isn't it? And obviously, because beyond last year, beyond CD Lamb, they weren't good, and that's another reason the offense wasn't functioning to the level it was the year before with Dak Prescott, and then it just got worse without Dak Prescott after. And I think for me, by far their biggest weakness this year is a remaining issue from last year. It's their run game, because they've somehow managed to acquire two of the most unreliable running backs in Javonte Williams and Miles Sanders, and there's other guys in that room as well, but that run game really doesn't infuse me, to be honest with you.
No, and I made the exact same notes as well, and it didn't have to come to this. They had the chance to sign Saquon Barkley, and they passed. They also passed on Derrick Henry and Josh Jacobs. Derrick Henry and Josh Jacobs would have really helped, but Saquon Barkley, let's say Dak Prescott had stayed healthy, that Cowboys team was going to be in the playoffs. Let's face it. And the offense looks like, in terms of the passing game, can be good. If Jake Ferguson can have a season like he did a couple of years ago, and CeeDee Lamb and Pickens can be the threats that we know that they should be, that's a good passing attack. But not if you can't run the ball properly, and you've got a running back by committee, but everyone is like a 5 out of 10. So it worries me, to the point that I think it's perhaps the biggest reason that this is a team that probably won't make the playoffs. Like, that pass game is all well and good, but if opposition defenses know that you're not going to try and run the ball on 3rd and 5, then you're going to have issues.
And I agree. I think they're decent, but I mean we mentioned it before. Well, obviously you mentioned that. Jerry Jones gets lots of stick and stuff, and him and his son run the sort of football operations, but they're really good at drafting, and they are really, really good at drafting. The majority of the players they will pick, especially in the first couple of days, will have impacts in this team. Obviously, Tyler Booker this year, on the offensive line, he's going to be starting straight away, and they're normally quite good at finding offensive linemen as well. So in terms of young players, and there's quite a few young players that are starting, especially on the defense this year. With their track record at drafting, there's a lot to be confident there, but they just feel a bit top heavy for me. That there's no depth in this roster compared to a lot of other teams that they're going to be competing for the wild card places with. So I feel like, as you do, a return to the playoffs is probably going to be a little bit tough, just because of the division they're in, the schedule they're facing as well. Their line is 8.5 wins, so one lower than the Commanders. They face the 9th toughest schedule, so just a little bit tougher than the Commanders as well. I'm going to go for the under with Dallas, just because I feel like they're going to be in a lot of shootouts. I don't think they've got the defensive players, other than Michael Parsons, to be able to win those shootouts. And we don't know what the run game is going to be like as well.
I think we do, Sam, don't we? I think we do. That's the problem.
Yeah. So for me, they're a 7, 8, 9 win team, and if it's 8.5, 7 and 8 are under 9, under 8.5. So I'm just gonna go for the under. But hopefully, when they're a bit better on both sides of the ball, there's continuity there as well, because this year a lot has changed in this team this year. I actually quite like them to do well in 2 years' time. But I just feel like there's been too much chaos this year for Dallas to go back to the playoffs after a year out.
Yeah, that line of 8.5, I did see about a month or two ago, the line was 7.5. And it's jumped a game in the last couple of months. I mean, God knows why. But at that point, 7.5, I thought the over. And now it's at 8.5, and everything that's been going on, I'm pretty comfortable taking the under there. This feels like an 8 and 9 team, a team that's going to hover around 500 most of the season. And I don't have enough confidence in them to give them a winning record. And I do feel for the Cowboys fans in the UK, because Cowboys fans get so much stick, and it's the US fans who have this kind of overinflated sense of the team's importance and their expectations. UK-based Cowboys fans, some of them have never seen the team in a Super Bowl, and still love their team. Like Sam, I know that mathematically you cannot have seen the Dolphins in a Super Bowl. So
no, I've not seen a playoff win. It's been 25 years for a playoff win. Yeah, it's been 20. It's the longest streak in the NFL. 25 years for a playoff win. I'm only 22, so I've not even seen a playoff win. So yeah, I'm in that boat.
And you're gonna have a bit of a wait as well. But yeah, so these Cowboys fans in the UK, they're a really great bunch. You have to deal with all this extra stick that Cowboys fans get in general, because people see them as like front runners, even though they haven't won a Super Bowl since the mid-90s. And the reason that I've got in my head how I'm starting to feel a sympathy with UK Cowboys fans is I've been watching that new SEC documentary on Netflix that came on the other day, and it's I'm obviously a big college football fan. I've been covering it for years, but it was something that occurred to me in the way that the documentary makers present the SEC in this documentary, that obviously they don't even mention the name of any other conference, which I get, it's understandable. When they're playing out of conference games, they do not mention any of that. And it'll be interesting when I get to the end, when they have to fudge the fact that they didn't get a team in the national championship game. But the SEC feels like if you had an entire conference made up of the Dallas Cowboys, where every single kind of home fan base just thinks, oh, the world revolves around us. That everything, we should absolutely be in the national championship game every year. Like LSU and Florida thinking we should absolutely do this. Florida have got 3 national championships in their entire history, but they feel like, well, yeah, we should be. And unfortunately, this is what US-based Cowboys fans are like, that, oh, down here, this is insane. We should always be in contention. And so you UK Cowboys fans, I'm with you. I get it. you guys are so loyal, and you have to put up with all the criticism of fans that you haven't brought on yourself. And I really enjoy, this might not help any of you who are too young. I really enjoyed those Cowboys teams of the early to mid 90s. And believe it or not, lots of people who were fans of other teams just were happy for the Cowboys because that team was so much fun to watch that they were not hated for being the Cowboys. It was like, oh, this is a good team. We like this. They were young. Everything seemed like cool and energetic. At some point, the Cowboys will have a little bit of luck again. It's just not this season. This looks a boring team, really. And yeah, tough times for Cowboys fans. Could be worse though, right? Could be the Giants.
Yeah, exactly. Well, exactly. You finished the podcast off with the Giants because they've given Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen one more year to turn their fortunes around after 2 straight losing seasons. They're sitting on quite literally the hottest seats in the league right now, needing something to change for their jobs to be saved.
They can't be sat on them. They can't be sat on them, Sam. It is absolutely impossible. The seats are so hot that they're just trying to kind of like somebody trying to have a poo on a public toilet where they don't want their bum to touch the seat. Then they are hovering above or something like that. It would burn them to their soul if they sat on the seats. That's how hot the seats are.
But also, the year they made the playoffs, they weren't even good. They were 1-4-1 in the division, and they were 4-7-1 in the NFC. They weren't good. And that's the thing. I think that's and then they paid Daniel Jones off that season, and I mean now he's not even in the building anymore. It's been an absolute mess for Giants fans.
There's an argument to be made. The 2 seasons they won the Super Bowl, they weren't that good. They were just amazing on the day.
Yeah, maybe it's just a Giants thing. But they have drafted poorly and they've lost 25 games in their last 2 years. It's all changed at quarterback. Russell Wilson has replaced Daniel Jones as a starter after they let him go at the end of last year, and first round pick Jackson Dart is waiting in the wings alongside Jameis Winston as well if Wilson doesn't hit the ground running. Now, he is a great fit for Brian Daboll's scheme, especially what he did when he was calling plays at Alabama. That's a very Russell Wilson spoke, but this is Russell Wilson now, not Russell Wilson 5 years ago. He's an interesting quarterback to have the responsibility of saving someone's job, isn't he?
Oh God, yeah, I wouldn't feel confident. I mean, I cannot imagine what realistic circumstances could happen for that coaching staff to keep their job. So the most realistic scenario is that the team starts really poorly. Russell Wilson is terrible. Maybe Jameis comes in for a game and he has a classic Jameis game where perhaps he throws for 350 yards, 3 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, something like that. And they think, okay, we're 8 weeks in. I don't know when their bye is, but let's say they're 8 weeks in and it's like, we may as well throw Jackson Dart in. Let's see what we've got. And then Jackson Dart goes about 500 down the stretch and looks good. At that point, Brian Daboll can go to the Maras and say, look, we're building something here. We tried it with the veterans, but look, we've got our quarterback of the future. We're not going to win the division this year. We're not going to make the playoffs, but this trajectory suggests that we could be in wildcard contention a year from now. Let's just keep it rolling. We've added Abdul Carter. We've got Malik Neighbors. We've got building blocks. That to me is the only realistic, quote unquote, realistic scenario that has Brian Daboll and his staff keep their job, because I'm not even thinking about a situation where Russell Wilson wins them 10 games or something like that. I don't see how that can happen. I think what's most realistic is that Russell Wilson isn't great. They don't even bother with Jameis Winston because there's no real point. It's not like you're building with Jameis Winston. What are you trying to do? So at that point, it's like, let's see what we got with Jackson Dart. Jackson Dart is not ready to start in the NFL right now, and he was not a first-round talent. It was a bad year to be trying to draft a quarterback anyway, beyond like Cam Ward, who is a legit first-round pick. Anyone else isn't. It will go badly. The staff will get fired, and they are in a position then to draft a quarterback next season, or even they decide we give Jackson Dart one more year with a new head coach. That also doesn't go that well. They get the first overall pick 1 year beyond that. And there is Arch Manning coming to New York, filling Eli's shoes, his uncle, and the start of a golden generation for the Giants. But even for that to happen, they're probably going to have to be bad for 2 seasons in a row, because Arch Manning is only about to have his first starting season at Texas. He is not going to declare for the draft. He is not someone who's having to look at his bank balance each month and think, oh God, I got to get in the NFL. He's fine. So he's going to get 2 seasons. So it's whether the Giants can time it so that they can get Arch Manning. But they'll be good quarterbacks next year. But their starter in, say, 3 or 4 years' time, Sam, is absolutely not on this roster right now, right?
No, absolutely not. Yeah, it is an interesting one. They're a strange team in general, to be fair, because, like, they've got Malik Neighbors. They've got Andrew Thomas, who, when healthy, is a really good left tackle. But is he ever healthy? Beyond Neighbors, this probably is the worst offense in the league. But their defense is really tasty, and I thought it will actually keep them in a lot of games. This defense is it was decent before. They spent a lot of money on their secondary this offseason as well. They've added high-priced free agents like Javon Holland and Paulson Adebo, and obviously, they've added Abdul Carter to play on that defensive line that already has Dexter Lawrence and Brian Burns, and then when you add in Kayvon Thibodeau, decent player linebackers, and Bobby Okereke and Malcolm McFadden, this unit should absolutely give them. It should give the Giants fans some reason for optimism, but it's just the offense that just lets this team down, doesn't it?
Yeah, and another great thing, if Jackson Dart is playing, and it's not a good sign if he is, because it means that Russell Wilson has been a disaster, it's that defense can keep scores down, that you're not there like, oh, okay, we're 30 points down in the third quarter. You shouldn't be in that situation. You should have some like favorable field position. I had high hopes for Kayvon Thibodeau, and he hasn't come close to reaching the heights that I thought he could. But
he's been all right, but he's not been bad. Like, he's been okay. No. He's been a 7, 8, 9 sack guy.
Like if he's your 4th best player on the line, that's not bad. If you've got 3 players that you're like, they're better than Kayvon Thibodeau, it's like, okay. Because on some other teams, Kayvon Thibodeau might be the 2nd best. At worst, he's their 3rd best. So that defensive line is really nice. So this isn't like you look at the team, and this is clearly one of the worst teams in the league, don't get me wrong. But it's not like you look at that roster and you think, God, like, where can you find optimism? You find optimism in that absolutely fantastic defense, even when you're not thinking about Malik Neighbors, who is absolutely elite. That defense is going to make things difficult for other teams. Just the offense is unlikely to be able to capitalize on it enough to actually string together enough wins to be in wildcard contention, or for Daboll to keep his job.
What did you make of Abdul Carter coming out? Were you one of those that thought he was the best player in the entire class as well?
Yeah. I felt he was the most reliable pick that you could make. And it's part of the reason, I think, why poor Cam Ward is like the quietest first overall pick quarterback ever. That everyone should be buzzing about him, but they weren't even buzzing about him going into the draft. It was like, okay, well, he's going number 1. What's going to happen afterwards? Shedeur Sanders was a bigger talking point than Cam Ward. So Abdul Carter just felt like he's bound to go in the top 3. He looks so good. I felt he was the most reliable, safest pick out of everyone in the draft, that I think he's just going to slot in. And he's got a lot of learning to do, but I just don't foresee a situation where we're looking back like, oh, he was a bust. If he can reach his potential in his rookie contract, then that defensive line is scary.
Oh, absolutely. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Thibodeau should they start out bad as well, because you'd like to think that when he gets to the trade deadline, say the Giants are 2-7, there'll be teams that'll be wanting to contending, that'll be wanting to boost their pass rush. So maybe they can get something out of him as well at that time, because there have been trade talks even before the draft. There were trade talks because everyone thought they'd be drafting Carter. Yeah,
it's always useful when you've got those pieces that you could offload, because for the Giants to get good in the next few years, it's going to have to be through the draft as well. So if they can accumulate draft picks and start putting more young players in place, then it's all good. I'm pessimistic about this season, and I'm pessimistic about the chances of Jackson Dart being an NFL starter, especially in a difficult situation there. But I feel that the Giants are on a trajectory to fail right now. But I think it's a good time to fail. Like, they reached for a quarterback, but they're gonna have a lot of good draft options in future seasons. I just hope their fans just accept that, okay, this season's going to be bad. There's going to be a new head coach. There's going to be some optimism, but even next season won't be good. Let's face it, next season won't be good either. I think it'll come. Because I think they are one of the better run organizations. So it's weird. I feel I've got this long-term optimism about the Giants, but it might just be because I just see all these sparkling quarterbacks who I think are going to come out in the next couple of seasons in the draft, and that they're going to have their pick of one of those, and that can change everything. If you put an elite rookie quarterback with Malik Neighbors and maybe some other pieces that they've got, that's going to be nice. That's an organization that can win.
Especially in the NFC as well, because you haven't Jane Daniels is probably the best quarterback in the NFC, and you haven't got the four guys that you've got in the AFC to get past that are always going to be there every year in the playoffs. And it's a nice conference to be in, to need a quarterback in heading into the next couple of years. We mentioned this bad start, and I'm sorry, Giants. I feel like that is going to happen because the games leading up to your bye week in week 14 are brutal. They've got to play Washington, Dallas, the Chiefs, the Chargers, the Eagles twice, the Broncos, the Niners, the Bears, the Packers, the Lions, and the Patriots before their bye. And so the only game they're probably going to be favourite in before that bye week is the Saints in week 5, maybe. Right, and that's the only game you can. Yeah, that's the only game. Yeah.
I tell you what,
that's number one pick game. In week 5.
If Channel 5 puts that's got to be a 6:00 kickoff, right? They're not putting that outside 6 p.m. If Channel 5 put that game on, and that's on terrestrial TV, the sport in this country dies. Because you'll get a load of people who aren't used to watching the NFL. They'll put on that game, they'll see the players in that, and they'll be like, "Oh, this sport is terrible." I'm confident Channel 5 won't do that, and they'll behave responsibly. But as a sicko, I'm kind of intrigued by that game. I kind of hope, sorry Saints and Giants fans, I kind of hope both teams are winless going into that game, just for the carnage of that game. Maybe we'll get Spencer Rattler against Jackson Dart. I don't actually dislike Spencer Rattler. Hot take.
No, a lot of people we've had on don't. I think I feel a lot. I'm the same. I feel like I'd much rather watch Spencer Rattler than Jackson Dart at this time. And if I feel like the Saints might have something about that, even if they are bad, they can move off him if he plays decent to then. So whereas Dart, we don't really know. And then for the Giants as well, this is the hardest schedule in the league. And for that reason,
because they don't get to play the Giants, do they?
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
That's what everyone is looking for on their roster. When do we play the Giants? Oh, we don't. Oh shit, we are the Giants.
It's like probably the two divisions you don't want to play on your schedule are the NFC East and the AFC West. Yeah, and you can add into that the NFC North. And they're playing all three of those divisions. Yeah. So they're probably the worst three divisions you can have on your schedule. The Giants have got all three, and for that reason, their total is set at 5.5 wins. For me, I'm going for the under. I think this is pretty easy. I think 5.5 wins is probably quite generous, to be honest with you. There may only be 2 games on the schedule that they are favoured in, maybe. And there's not really a run that you can look at and say, oh, they can nick 1 or 2 here, because it is relentless, that start. I'm going for the under here.
Yeah, it has to be the under. Sorry, Giants fans, but that schedule is awful. The team is not better than it was last year. But better times are coming. When I look at teams that are, let's say, putting the Saints and the Browns in that mix of like who's going to have the worst season, the Browns are a bigger mess than the Giants, and I think the Giants have got the chance to just bottom out and start coming back up quicker than the Browns. The Saints, I just don't know. It depends, because Spencer Rattler could be okay, and then you've got a decision to make. But the Browns and the Giants, when you look at the quarterback rooms for those two teams, they just scream abject failure for what they're trying to do this year. So yeah, it's got to be the under. If they get 5 wins, I think they should be pleased, really, and that's still the under.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? Maybe the Saints wait a year and then draft Arch Manning themselves.
Yeah,
How cool would that be?
There's a handful of great places for Arch Manning to go, and obviously New Orleans, where his granddad went, is great. And we'll put the Colts in there, and you could potentially say the Broncos, because obviously Peyton did finish his career there. But I love the idea of Arch Manning at the New Orleans Saints. That would be delicious. Yeah. Let's make it happen.
Absolutely. Well, that's it for today's episode. Thanks for listening to us preview the NFC East, and don't forget to let us know how wrong you think the two of us are about your teams as well, if you support any of these teams.
And how wrong I was calling Micah Parsons Micah Richards. That was very wrong.
Yes,
that's the only wrong thing I've said. All my predictions are correct. That's the only wrong thing I said.
Yeah. We'll see if you get any mentions on that. You can find us on Twitter at Full10Yards, or drop your thoughts in the comments as well. Big thanks to you, Ben, for coming on again. It was great to have you back. Would you like to let everyone know where they can find your stuff?
Yeah, you can find me at Tweets from Ben. I'm doing a lot of stuff now, kind of in the run up to the season. And of course, if you have not already bought The American Football Revolution: How Britain Fell in Love with the NFL, then it is a great pre-season gift to yourself, and buy as many copies as you like for Christmas presents for people you know. So yeah, please buy my book.
Yeah, get the Amazon orders in. Okay. If you watched us on YouTube, a like could be highly appreciated. So many of you listeners aren't actually subscribed to the channel, so if you'd like to get updated and notified when a new podcast is uploaded, hit the subscribe button, and then next to it there's the notification bell as well to get notifications when we upload. And if you're a podcast part, go on.
Can I say something, Sam? To those of you listening, support UK NFL content creators like Sam, who are doing this because they love the game, not because they're getting freebies from the NFL and stuff like this. Just people who
that ball there is my only freebie. That's it.
Well, yes, I mean, there we go. That's the sort of thing.
My only freebie. Yeah.
So please support your independent content creators who are out here promoting the NFL, helping keep us all kind of in the loop, communicating with each other, doing great things for the community as you do, Sam. So yeah, get subscribed to the podcast and the YouTube channel, because it absolutely all helps. If you consider yourself a part of the NFL fan community, you will do this. You will absolutely do it. Otherwise, please tell me your excuse for not doing something that costs you absolutely nothing.
Yeah, big thank you, Ben. I'll be back early next week with another guest for our third division preview podcast ahead of the 2025 season. But until then, I hope you have a great rest of your day. I've been Sam Moore. This has been the Full 10 Yards NFL podcast. So bye for now.